Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's Snack, Chat, and Stay on Track. My name is Catherine, and I'm here with the wonderful Shannon, and we are here to host a very special week's edition, I guess we can say, of Snack and Chat. We are here with Beth Tyson, who is actually, she's a lot of things. So let me do maybe a more formal introduction of you, Beth, because first and foremost, you are the author of A Grand Family for Sullivan, which is an amazing book that I know has received great feedback from our community. But you also are, you do a lot more than that. So Beth is a psychotherapist, a parenting coach, and obviously a children's book author who specializes in helping kinship families, or also known as grand families, help cope with trauma and loss. You're a public speaker and an advocate, and you use trauma responsive approaches to help families in the healing process and learn tools to try and help move forward as families. And I think that's absolutely amazing. We know that this type of support and resources are few and far between. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us during your lunch hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I'm hearing a bit of feedback when I talk. So if you guys are on the live and you're hearing the feedback, please let me know and I'll do what I can. Do you hear anything, Shannon?
I hear it catching when you're talking, but nobody's commented on the live feed yet. So it might just be within us.
Okay.
So I just keep muting to make sure I'm not causing it. But if anyone pops up, so if you're on live, I see that we have quite a number of people already on. If you're on live and you're hearing feedback when Catherine talks, just pop comment for us so we know.
Yeah, we want to make sure you guys can hear us. Absolutely. So we did have a few questions from the community that was pre-populated. So as always, we inform the community of what's coming. I still hear, sorry, it's hard. Beth, I'm just going to mute you on my end if that's okay, to see if there's feedback, and then I'll unmute you. Okay, let's see if this works. Maybe it doesn't. We'll see. So we've had pre-populated questions that have come in from the community, as well as we obviously have people watching live. So thank you so much for joining us. If you do have a question about A Grand Family for Sullivan or about kinship families, please feel free to message in the live feed. Please know that this is a public forum, so everything that you share will be publicized. It is available for anyone to see and view. So we obviously want everyone to be mindful of that. So use of names or specific situations, we don't want to compromise your safety. Shannon, who has been amazing with this, has actually posted a little thread in our private groups as well. So if you are watching live, but you aren't comfortable posting publicly, pop on over to our private groups and ask a question there, and you'll see Shannon's head shifting around because she's doing about 15 things at once.
I look super sketchy.
Well, you're just like moving around. She is listening.
I am trying to multitask with the best of them, guys.
We're good. We're so awesome. So Beth, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. We first want to ask you a few questions specifically about your book, because again, it's getting a lot of feedback that we've heard from the community. So we'd love to talk about that. And then I know we have some specific pin questions that we're going to kind of discuss as a group. So I'm going to unmute you so that we can talk.
Hey.
Okay.
So before we start with any questions, Beth, is there anything specific that you'd like to share about the book or the process, or anything that added value you can add to our understanding of the book?
Sure. Well, what the book has done is, one of the best things the book has done is put me in contact with other grand families and kin families, so that I have become sort of this advocate and speaker for them on their behalf, because oftentimes they are so overwhelmed caring for the children, or working full time and caring for children, or maybe they have a disability or other issues that they don't have time to advocate for themselves. So the book has really put me into a completely new area for me. But yeah, I'm starting to do a lot of work with nonprofits and speaking publicly about grand families to build awareness. And we're trying to gain more support and resources for grand families who don't have many.
So what was your motivation behind writing the book?
So my motivation was, I was working as a family therapist in the child welfare system, and half of my caseload were kinship families. we call them kinship or grand families in the United States, which is a relatively new word, grand family. But I noticed that they were really having more struggles sometimes in the foster families I was working with because of their unique situation where they have mom and dad possibly coming in and out of the child's life. And so that creates sort of a dynamic that foster families don't have as much of, at least in my experience. And so I wanted to bring a book that would help these children cope with such a hard time, but also I wanted to build awareness for the situation because I just saw it as mostly an invisible population. People, at least in America, they don't talk about it very much. It's sort of flying under the radar of a lot of issues that are going on. And so I wanted to bring awareness and help build empathy for children that are in the situation.
I love that. And I'm going to step out and just say, I love the term grand family. I love it. Like when I heard that and I was like, oh, and investigate a little bit as to why you chose it. I think it's not that it's a better term, but it just sounds more inclusive and more of a hug. And I'm like that. I'm a blue touchy-feely touch, like fix everything. So.
Me too. And you know, the main reason I changed it, originally the book's title was going to be Grady Bear and Kinship Care. And when I started sharing that with people, nobody knew what kinship care was. They didn't know what a kinship, they said, what's kinship? What's a kinship? They just, people in the general population just don't know what it is, or they're not aware of it. And so I said, well, there's another term I'm thinking of using called a grand family. And everybody was like, that's amazing. We love it. We love it. And I think there's a sense of pride behind being a grand family. You know, it's the word grand is in there. So, you know, it sounds like a positive thing, and not that kinship doesn't, but it just has more of a warm and fuzzy feel to it.
Exactly. It's all the blue.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about Sullivan and his family?
Sure. So Sullivan is a little koala, and I'll hold the book up here in case anybody wants to see what the cover looks like. He's a little koala who's being raised by his grandmother, and he is scared and afraid, but he doesn't know how to express his fears or his questions. So instead he gets angry. And this was a common theme that I saw with the families I worked in, was that, you know, sometimes these kids are labeled troubled or difficult or hard to deal with, but really it's because they have all this fear and anxiety and sadness that nobody is helping them express. And it comes out as a secondary emotion, anger. Anger is a secondary emotion to fear, sadness, and injustice, which are all sort of the underpinnings of what these children are experiencing. So typically you'll see, you know, aggressive behavior and outbursts or tantrums or disobedience, defiance. But what's underneath all of that is fear, sadness, and in a sense of a lack of control over their lives. So I wanted the book to address that. That was really important, that the book showed that not only was he angry, but the reasons why he was angry were his fear and his questions that he couldn't get answered. The other main part about the book is that Sullivan's a resilient little guy. I mean, he's brave and courageous, and so he's a role model for other children in this situation. He has autonomy, so he finds a way to help himself. Nobody comes in to rescue him necessarily, although he does learn things from other people around him. But he, in the end, solves, or at least tries to help himself through his hard emotions. And I thought that was really important, that the empowerment, the message of empowerment, that within ourselves, we can use these tools to help ourselves move forward. And also, let's see what else about him. I mean, those are the main things. And I chose a boy character because I wanted him to be an example of a boy that learns how to express emotions as well. I thought that was kind of, I went back and forth over whether I wanted to be a little girl or a little boy. And initially I thought girl, but then I finalized on boy because of that needing more role models for young boys to be okay with expressing their feelings.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stigma, and I think I'm very excited to know that there's a book out there that's actually addressing some of these scary things, in that it's, again, you're talking about that advocacy piece. So it's not only saying, hey, you're not alone, and hey, we have to talk to our kids about this because we can't just pretend it's not happening. And part of our job with Adopt for Life is we provide resources, and having kin books, grand family books, is, I don't know if we know of any other that's geared towards children, that actually addresses a lot of those big kind of emotions. So I know that we're excited. We know that some of our community families have purchased the book, and they're just really excited that it actually just jumps into what someone can be feeling, but that there's that support and love that can be there, and you can go through the emotions and be okay with expressing whatever it is that you're going through. So I know we're excited, obviously, because we reached out to you for for this. Yeah,
I'm excited here too, because here I am, in the world by myself writing this book, and I don't know what the reception is. I mean, I have really nice reviews on Amazon, but other than that, I don't know how it's being received. And so to hear that from you is really special and important to me. So I thank you for that. Another important piece of the story was that I tried to keep it realistic and yet hopeful. So there isn't necessarily a happy ending where the story is wrapped up in a bow and everything's okay, because a lot of times for children in this situation, that isn't the outcome. There's a lot of loose ends and no certain answers. And so I didn't want the book to provide an answer and then for a child to read it and say, well, that didn't happen to me. How come this didn't happen for me? And so that was important too, that the ending is sort of open-ended.
But I think that's a huge thing. I think that as adults, and I mean, I'm not an author, but as an adult, often our first thing is to try to fix, to try to make it better, make them feel better. And I'll be truthful, I haven't read the book, which probably sounds horrible, and I apologize. But I love that, because with all of the hats that I wear, whether it's an adoptive mother or whether I'm through my work with Adopt for Life, I'm also a director of a childcare center, and we can't fix everything. And that is the exact, our next question is, who is this book suitable for? And in my daycare, childcare provider hat, I'm like, I need this book so that my teachers can read this to my children, because we're so used to things tying it up and this is the happy ending, right? And we
happily ever after, that's not life.
Exactly. It's not a fairy tale. Life is not a fairy tale. And when we're giving them tools and resources that say, well, so-and-so's life came together perfectly, that's just not their reality. So I love that, and I'm going to have to go to Amazon. So with that in mind, who would this book be suitable for?
It's really suitable for anybody who's touched by care. I mean, foster care or kinship care or adoption. Anyone in that situation who is grieving the loss of a parent can relate to this story. It is geared specifically for grand families and kinship families, but I think there's a lot that can come out of it for other kids that are in similar situations, because really what Sullivan is, he's grieving the loss of that everyday relationship with his mom. His life has been turned upside down. Everything he knows has changed, where he's living, his home, his toys, his friends, his family. And so it's really a story about what happens when your life turns upside down, when everything you know is not there anymore. And so it walks you through what the child's emotions might be like, and it also walks the child and the adult through what to do in a way. I made Grandma be this person who was accepting of Sullivan's feelings. When he gets angry, she doesn't get angry back. She doesn't explode. She says, Sullivan, I'll give you some time. And Sullivan takes some time to go and be with his feelings for a few minutes, and she lets him have that space to express his emotions. And so I think that it's reaching the families who need it, in that it's really aimed for kinship families and grand families, because there aren't many books or hardly any books on this topic. But I also have just received so much feedback that it's really helpful to anybody who's struggling with big emotions, or whose life has changed drastically for unfortunate reasons. But specifically, I would say children between 2 and 10 years old would find the book enjoyable. I'm hearing feedback that kids that won't sit still through the story, that they're listening to it. And my favorite feedback is that one of the people who read it to their grandson, they made a pact after they read the book that they're a grand family now. And I was just in tears.
Like my blue heart just went.
Yeah, they made a pact that they're a grand family now. And that was just everything to me. That if one kid can feel more accepted and loved, that's all that matters to me.
So I legit cry at almost every snack and chat. And here I thought today I'd be fine. And now I'm like, okay. Thanks, Beth. So we'll tie it up to ask, where can families and professionals purchase your book?
Sure. You can find a link on my website, which is bethtyson.com, BETHTYSON.com. So there's a link right there on the front page. There's also resources for grand families and kin families on there. So I write blogs and articles about how to help children in these situations cope with trauma and loss and grief. And I have some other helpful resources on there. It is also available on Amazon.com. You can
and .ca, I believe, as well.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So just to so that we're aware, Beth is coming to us from the U.S. I can't remember what state. Philadelphia, not near us. So I know that when I was researching the book myself, I did come across it from Amazon.ca, but we do realize that our snack and chats are international. So maybe we can put the link for the .com and the .ca. We can go on and do that once we're done. So whoever, and I see Shannon just put the website, your website. So if they are looking for other resources, this is a great one, absolutely, for anyone to come and share and learn.
Right. I have a lot on there about how to increase bonding between children and adults after something like this happens, how to connect, how to bond, because it's all about trust. Healing trauma is all about building trust. And if you can establish that trusting relationship with a child, that's how you really start to see the healing begin.
Absolutely. So I know we do have some questions from our families that have come up. And if you're watching live, please feel free to jot some questions down. But I'm also mindful that we don't have much time. 45 minutes is never long enough for us. So if we don't get to your questions, we always follow up and either answer it on Adult for Life, or we can have Beth help support us in answering some question as well. So I don't know, Shannon, if you wanted to kind of jump into some of the questions, and we're going to do our best.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's already 20 to the hour already. I'm like, how did that even happen? So there is a number of questions today. So again, I'm not picking in an order. If we don't get to it, we always address them in the comments. But I'm just going to jump right in. This may seem like a silly question. That's not my words. It's our community family's words. But I know this is a safe place to ask and learn. What exactly is a kin family? Is it always only family members? I'm curious in why some use the term grand family versus kin family.
Sure. So kinship or kin family and grand family essentially is the same exact thing. It's just a different word to use. And a kinship family or a grand family is any child who's being raised by a relative or close family member or friend. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a blood relation. It could be, say, a teacher, or someone in the community that's close with the family takes the child in. They're considered a grand family or a kin family. It could be an aunt, an uncle, a step parent. It could be, most likely it's a grandparent. I mean, that's what we see primarily is grandparents raising grandchildren, but also aunts and uncles and different, various relatives of the child. So that encompasses a large group.
I think as well that I know that for adoptive families, at least, we are bound a lot by the legal process. So are they formally adopted, or are you on adoption probation? And so, Beth, do you think it's fair for me to say that a kin family or a grand family is anyone raising a family member or a person you have a significant relationship with, regardless of if there's legal custody, if they're kind of in the process, they would still kind of fall under the grand family? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So it's not bounded by legal situations. And that's why we know there's actually a lot more than we have documented. So in the United States, we have approximately 2.8 million grand families, and about 3% of our children are living or being raised by grandparents. There's many more where they're not documented because they're not in touch with the child welfare system in any way. And so these are just informal relationships where mom or dad, says to their parents that they can't handle it, or for whatever reason, maybe it's usually addiction, mental health issues, disabilities, incarceration.
Well, can you say that number again? How many children in the U.S.?
In the U.S., so we have 2.8 million children, and
that's formally declared.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's everywhere. If you look up on Generations United, which is the organization that does a lot of this work and where I got the information from, you'll see a lot more information on what the breakdown is. But it's about 3% of our children are being raised by their grandparents. Some states are higher, some states are at 6%. So it just depends on where you live. But we have about 400 to 500,000 in foster care. So you're looking at 3.5 times the amount of children, right? 3 to 4. I'm not great.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know the specific stats in Canada, but I'm sure it would be comparable.
Right. And grand family, they're a safety net for the children to not end up in the foster care system. There are better outcomes associated with kinship families, staying together, and the protection from additional abuse and from additional trauma. When you stay within the family, the outcomes are just better all around. Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to our next question. See, time flies so quickly. It says, we are a proud kin family. We talk to our children and their close friends often about families and how they may look different. The school is on board about school assignments and support. Despite everything we do, my son, who's 8, struggles with being bullied at school for having a grandmother as a mother. He doesn't want me to drop him off at school or parties anymore. Do you have any suggestions?
Oh, wow. That's a really tough one. I would say that, communicating with the school and the administration about it might be one place to go for help. But also some of the research I've done on bullying and trying to understand what goes on behind it is that if you can talk to your children about what's going on, find out what exactly is happening, and help the child to have the confidence to address it in a way that doesn't attack the bully back. Mm-hmm. So saying something like admitting that the bully is correct in a way, yeah, I don't live with my mom. Yeah, my grandmother is my mom. So what? And kind of just walking away instead of showing tears or a lot of emotional reaction or attacking back at the bully or trying to make fun of the bully back. A lot of times it just makes the bullying continue and sort of has this spiral effect, a downward spiral effect. But if you can admit like, yeah, I do live with my grandmother. I am being, raised by my grandmother, whatever it is, sort of just admitting the truth of that. And that would be some work you would have to do with the child. And it's best not to talk to the child right after school about these incidences, or right before they're about to happen, or right before school. One of the best times a day to approach children about sensitive topics is before bedtime. We find that before bedtime, children are more open to sharing their thoughts and feelings. Their defenses might be a little bit down because they're tired and they've had a full meal, so they're feeling more content and at peace. But it's usually before bedtime is a time where they start to let out a lot of their fears and their feelings. And so it's a good time to approach some of these topics and just talk with them through some things that maybe they can do, being confident, teaching them how to be, look people in the eye when they speak to them, and that can keep their body posture upright, so that, if a bully notices them and they notice their body language is confident, they're less likely to try and bully that person. So there's lots you can do. I would suggest, finding some resources. I know that PBS and Sesame Street has some good tools and resources to help combating bullying.
Yeah. And I think as well, and just hearing, and I have an 8-year-old son, so I know that it's hard. All ages are hard. Eight is hard for a lot, especially with bullying. That is, so many kids are being bullied these days. And I think what we hear from families is being connected with almost a buddy, or having an opportunity for this child to maybe meet peers around his age who are in a similar situation could help validate his experiences a bit. And I'm not too sure if he's the only grand family in his school, but maybe connecting with like you said, the school resources to see if there's other families, or even with communities like ours, and we can help validate some of those experiences, but know that he's not alone in this, and that clearly it's common, like you showed with the stats. So I think I would suggest that as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really crucial part of the book. The purpose of the book is that I'm being invited to speak in schools and to read the book and do school visits. And when I read the story, it builds empathy for anyone who's listening to the story, and it helps the other students and the other children understand what is going on for this child. And when they can see that, and instead of, oh, you're weird, you're different, you're not like me, they can start to see, oh, wow, we have more in common than I realized. And, oh, wait a minute, what if that happened to me? Or what if I couldn't live with my mom? How would I feel? So it shifts the perspective. And in the back of the book, which I love, one of my favorite pages, I list out a list of famous people who have been raised by their grandparents. So
all the feels again.
So in the back of the book, there's some additional coping skills, but this page here lists
50 Cent. Look at that.
Yeah, Oprah Winfrey too.
What's that?
Did I read Oprah Winfrey?
Yeah.
Barack Obama. You see, 50 Cent, guys. 50, is he like? I mean, he's been cool in my generation. So.
That's amazing. I think Catherine and I would have given the same feedback as you, is to try to find some kind of supportive community, whether it's ours or other community where the children can link with families that are like theirs, so they can release that feeling of feeling alone a little bit. That won't stop the bully. So everything you said, Beth, was amazing as well. Our next question is, I am an aunt who is considering a kin/custody arrangement of my niece, but I'm worried about hurting my sister. It's not a safe place for my niece to be in, but I feel that by taking legal custody, I would crush my sister. Due to safety reasons, she isn't allowed access right now. How can I manage all of these feelings, mine, my sister's, and my 11-month-old nieces? It's a heavy question.
That is tough. That's a tough situation, and there is no easy answer, just like there's no easy answer to any of these. But what I can do is give you, some of the ideas that I have. I would say the first thing that jumped out to me was wondering if you have considered sharing, or if that person had considered sharing her feelings with her sister about it, because, you know, that could diffuse some of the anger and some of the, if she shares with her sister, like, this is really hard for me. I really don't want to hurt you. I don't want to upset you. I know this is going to crush you. But we have to keep the best interest of the child at heart. And right now, she can't keep the child safe. And so I'm keeping the child safe for you until you can keep him or her safe. You know, it's my job to keep your child safe right now. That's, you know, and that's the message in the book too, is that it's grandma's job to keep Sullivan safe. And when parents aren't able to. And I think also just trying to understand that, it's okay to do that, you know, like, it's okay to care for a child who needs it, no matter what. And, you know, I toyed with going back and forth with over, is there someone else in the family that would want to also take the child? And I went through all this in my mind, and I'm thinking now, like, it's okay. You're her sister. Who better to take care of the child?
I mean, we don't know the whole scope of the situation, right. So we don't
right.
know if there's already been a conversation, but perhaps there hasn't, and perhaps sister would love nothing more than
right.
her child to go with her sister. So it is hard to answer some of these questions without knowing all of it.
Right.
But I think we can all agree that there's a lot of emotion tied up in that
you can
situation.
feel it. And I think too, for the person who asked that question, who may be listening to this, I think it's important to also know that in your question to us was, it's not safe right now for her to be in. That doesn't mean
right.
it's going to be forever. And so maybe there is a chance for mediation. Maybe this is a temporary thing. Maybe like Beth was saying, having those kind of hard conversations, but full while knowing that if people are healthy in a good place, absolutely, this might change the dynamics in 3 months or 5 months or a year. You don't know. So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but please feel free to reach out. So for the person who did post that question, there's supports available, whether it's getting you linked up with a local psychotherapist or social worker in your area, or just having someone come to meetings, or if you want to connect with another kin family who is an aunt who went through this, we're happy to make that connection for you as well, just to try and help get the feedback as well.
Right, because that's a lot to handle. That's a lot to have to be not only caring for a young child, but also dealing with, you know, difficult relationships around it and your own feelings about it all and the way it changes your own life. I mean, that's overwhelming. And so having support in place, having someone they can talk to, a psychotherapist, or just you need to sort of support yourself in that situation and find someone that you can talk to that you trust.
So our next question, I think, is heavy from a different aspect. It says, as a kin family, I see that there are unique circumstances that we experience vice adoptive families experience, yet the level of support, financially and otherwise, are different. What are the ways we can continue to advocate for support?
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I have partnered with a nonprofit organization that is starting in my local community. It's called Grands Stepping Up, but there are others. There's another one called Gratitude for Grands, and there's a national organization starting in the US called grandfamilytoday.org. And so basically it's grandparents raising their grandchildren who are saying, we got to do something. We need to be the squeaky wheel. You know, this isn't fair that we don't have the same support and access to resources that foster families do. And we're drowning over here, you know, and that's the thing, is that some of these families can't keep a roof over their head because they've taken on the responsibility of raising their grandchildren or their nieces and nephews, or, you know, any other relative. But so really getting together and trying to organize as a group and speaking with your politicians, and, you know, we recently had an article published in our newspaper that got a lot of political attention. We had several senators and state representatives at our kickoff meeting last weekend. So there's a lot of energy around this right now. People are really starting to take notice, and I think that, the more you need to organize and get people together that are also going through this and start speaking up.
Yeah, it's very well said. Absolutely. And appreciating too that we are in different countries. So
Yeah.
the resources might be a little bit different, but I do know there is Can Grants here in Canada who is trying to do the exact same things, trying to ring those bells. And I know organizations such as ourselves and the Adoption Council of Ontario, we're very well aware of the disparity in support. And so we're doing what we can. So maybe even connecting with local not-for-profits in your community to try and help support even blog writing, just getting your stories out there, getting your truth out there, I think is what we need, because a lot of people just have no idea, or a lot of assumptions are made. And so I think this is what we need to continue and to help support and ensure that kin and grand families are getting the support that they deserve and need.
Right. And I would say start at the local level, start small, because if you can start building some momentum within your local community, whether it's a local newspaper, they're always looking for content. They're looking for stories. They're looking for things. So, reaching out to your local groups and your local news stations and newspapers can be one place to start, and don't look at the whole, the whole country or the whole world needing to have attention, but just start right where you are, right in your own home.
So we do still have several more questions, and we have 5 more minutes. So we're not going to get through all of them. Catherine and I try really hard to hit that 1 o'clock mark, but I do want to finish because it may take a few more minutes than others, is as a professional, because we do have professional families that are professionals that tune in. As a professional, what have been your biggest eye openers or aha moments in supporting kin families?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the complexity of it all. I mean, it's such a complex situation. Again, you have the parents who may be coming in and out of the home, causing disruption to the stability of the relationship between the grandparent and the grandchild. There's the bullying aspect. There's the fighting between family members that happens, that causes issues. There's the grandchildren being upset with the grandparents for not letting them be with the parents. I mean, it's just such a complex situation. I'm so shocked at the lack of support and resources for these families. But my biggest aha moment is that what a support this can be for these children. Like what the grandparents or the relatives are doing is the work of angels, the work of superheroes, or the work of, you are really preventing more trauma, more abuse for children. And so I just want them to know that, they may not see all the work that they're doing right now. With kids, we don't necessarily see a lot of gratefulness or appreciation. And you might not see that until years down the road, or till they're adults, or whenever that might be. But you can be, I use the analogy of the pickle jar. You ever try to open a pickle jar and you try to open it and you can't, and so you hand it to somebody else and they try to loosen it and they still can't get it open. Then that third person finally gets the pickle jar lid off. Well, that's kind of how I see all the people that work to help children through these really hard and overwhelming situations, is that you might not ever see the lid come off the pickle jar, but you can be the one of the hands on the jar that is helping to loosen and twist that lid every time that you connect and bond with that child, and every time you build trust with that child, and every time you support that child and you're there for that child, you're one of the hands on the pickle jar. And so that's just, and that's just the role that I see for, these families that are going through so much, is that they feel really overwhelmed, but they are making a huge difference in these children's lives.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's okay to say that you don't know a lot of this information. Like for myself, for instance, I don't have personal experience in grand families or in kin families, but the more educated I become, the more of an ally I can be in helping families advocate and support and educate. So I think I'm sure I speak for Shannon and myself that we're just in awe of the work that you do, and it's just so key. And even hearing the feedback from the community who's watching right now, I think it's clear that we're behind you 100%, and hopefully we're going to continue what we can do as well as an organization. So we appreciate it. We are coming to the end. So Shannon, if you're good, I'm going to do my little wrap up spiel, if that's good. So Beth, thank you again so much for coming and for answering the questions. I know these were hard ones. They aren't usually this hard, but clearly it just shows how much of an important topic this is.
Yes.
And for taking your time over your lunch hour in answering this. Again, we will be posting the links to purchase a grand family for Sullivan on the comments below, both at the American and the Canadian sites. Next week's Snack and Chat, we're going to be talking about adoption language. So we're actually going to have another guest come. We have been having a lot of guests. It's been working out well for us, but we're going to have another guest who actually has her own YouTube channel who is talking about reactions of things not to say to adoptive parents and how we can have adoption positive and trauma informed language. So that's our next topic for next week. Thank you guys so much. Shannon, as always, you are the master behind all of this and trying to keep us afloat with all of the posts. So I appreciate it. Have a great day. And
have a good week, guys. Thanks, Beth.